boldly engaging the mindless propaganda of our time, apparently with reason. This is Rage of the Age.
This is Rage of the Age, and we have with us today the founder of Unity Lab, best-selling author, expert in purpose and leadership, and keynote speaker. I want to introduce to you today Brandon Peele. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Philip. Thanks for having me.
So Unity Lab looks like was started last year. Is that right?
That's correct.
And as you've relayed to me, one of the goals, one of the things you think can be accomplished by this is the healing of division in the land, bring more of a unity to us. Why don't you go ahead and start with the founding of Unity Lab and which you know how it's taken off since?
Yeah, you got it. So I'm probably not telling you anything you don't know, but we are as divided as we've ever been. White, black, gay, straight, Republican, Democrat, you name it. And it's like we're not just segregated, but not just divided, but segregated, like and isolated, where we have, certain areas are this ethnicity or this voting pattern, or this type of job. And the only place in the United States where we come together across difference for a sustained period of time is the organization. So basically, because I researched like neighborhood associations, PTAs, churches, they're pretty ideologically and racially and generationally cohesive. And so if we're going to find the pluribus in the unum, so our purpose as a nation, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and e pluribus unum, right? If we're going to do that, it's my understanding that the only place to actually do that is in organizations. So like at work. And this doesn't have to be like giant things like IBM. This could be, a 5-person landscaping company. But that's basically the terrain where I think the battle for the American soul is going to be fought.
Is this only at work or any institution? Are we talking like Lions Club? Are we talking, the Boy Scouts? Is this any and every organization that reaches people you're talking about, or is this particular types?
It's primarily work. And the reason is that we have a very strong purpose at work, a mission, if you will. Like, we all want to keep our jobs and keep the paychecks coming, right? But oftentimes we also really care about some of the people we work with. We have a vision for our future in our career. And so there's a lot of incentive that's there already for people to empathize and grow and transform and become essentially better leaders. I would say one of the paradigms that's shifted over the last 30, 40 years is that the United States has become much more diverse. Like, it's the percentage of folks who identify as white is shrinking. And to lead any team these days, you're pretty much leading a diverse team. And so businesses have a strong reason to train their leaders to lead anybody. Like I said, men, women, gay, straight, white, black, Republican, Democrat. And so there's this giant profit motive to create effective leaders. And what we can do, the work we do at Unity Lab, is to empower people to be empathetic towards people who are different, to become better leaders, and to develop high trust working relationships that just so happens to be at the heart of what's ailing our nation.
So is the focus primarily on people's differences and how to just come to terms with it?
Absolutely not. So I'm part of a larger coalition of folks who many of whom do that, like works like or organizations like the Braver Angels. We go about it in a different way. So what we do is we form these small groups of 4 people. So you can envision, 2 of those people are going to be men, 2 are going to be women, 2 are going to be Republican, 2 are going to be Democrat. 2 are going to be older, 2 are going to be younger. 2 are going to be of Caucasian descent, 2 are not. And so the idea is that each of these small groups are optimized for diversity. And all they do is learn something, do something, and talk about it. And talk about their personal experience with it. So we're not going into like, is it all lives matter or is it Black Lives Matter? We're not going into should government provide healthcare or not. It's not about that. It's about me telling a story about how something showed up in my life, so that we're just relating to each other as human to human. We're not going into the deep end of right, wrong, politics, all that kind of stuff. And so what ends up happening, so I did a research study last year, the population of 103 leaders at a global biotech company, is that 98% of those participants experience respect from their diverse peers that were in their small group. 96% experienced empathy. 85% took new actions. 76% developed new habits. So what we have is such a highly effective way to get people to be grown-ups and nice together, despite believing and coming from different backgrounds.
So you get these 4 people together and you try to make it as diverse as possible, given what you're dealt. And then they just share stories with each other? Is there a curriculum that guides this? Well, I guess my question really is, what's the overall ideological paradigm? Or are you telling me it's actually neutral, period, and there's no ideology whatsoever?
There is no progressive, conservative ideology whatsoever. Basically, so if you go on the Unity Lab website on the methodology page, all we're doing is taking the best practices from education, neuroscience, psychology, and leadership development and applying them. None of those have any political orientation, ideological foundation. And so what people are learning are certain skills. So, for example, there's a purposeful leadership curriculum. There's a emotional intelligence curriculum. There's a leadership communication curriculum. There's one about bringing your purpose to work. All of these things have no ideological bent. So when people do this work, so the purpose curriculum, for example, they do one exercise that reveals a little bit more about who they are. They do another exercise in that module to express their purpose at work. Then they have a 1-hour peer facilitated conversation where they have 5 questions that everybody in that group answers. And basically what the questions are designed to do is just get people to share more of who they are with each other.
So they just basically explain who they are. How does that not normally happen at a job site? I mean, my experience in job sites is, and this being with people of all kinds of work, we talk and share things and discuss things, and sometimes it gets animated, sometimes it don't. I mean, you learn who they are, you decide if you like them or not, and you move on with life. How is this any different?
So it's a great point, because it's a very normal human thing to want to connect and share parts of our lives, especially when we got something going on at home or in our family. But what ends up happening is what's called similarity bias. So you and I, our skin is fair. Like, I'm more likely to go to you and say, my wife is mad at me again, versus going to, say, a female colleague, or to somebody who has a different skin color or is in a different kind of relationship. So it's basically what's called, similarity bias. So what ends up happening is that you and I are we become besties, thick as thieves over the next few years, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that I don't go to the folks who are different, who don't vote the same way as me, who don't look like me, who don't make love like me. And so what ends up happening is America stays this tossed salad, and we never actually get to understand people who are different.
Well, I can understand the being pulled to people of similarities, but just the same, we also have interactions with people who are not similar.
True.
But the thing is don't we pick and choose? Because there's some people, for example, I don't want advice from, because depending on how they're living and who their quote identity and what they are, I don't want to deal with, and I don't want their advice. I shouldn't. But okay, we get along. But in the same, and vice versa. Maybe they know, well, I'm probably going to say certain things and they don't want to receive it, so they're not going to come to me and asking me. So how is setting these 4 people down? Do you make them ask these questions they won't ask? I mean, what I'm saying, what are you doing that's pulling this out, that's having a different change in, like, as you're making it sound, changing people's lives forever kind of approach with the numbers you gave?
Yeah.
What's the difference?
So basically, people are in these discussions. They're sharing about their own personal experience. So it's not, I'm not sharing my opinion on something. I'm not telling you what you should do or how to get something done. So, like, to give you an example, in the first module of the purpose program, right, we say, like, recalling this purpose exercise, what jumped out to you as true or novel or electric, like what really resonated with you. So in that, it's literally just people are telling things about themselves. They're not saying what something should be like or shouldn't be like. So it's very much like a self-reflective, self-revelatory, and folks can kind of, reveal as much as they're comfortable. So depending on where the group is in terms of their own growth and development, some folks will be like, "Oh my God, my dad never loved me,"
Right.
And some folks will be like, "I didn't like that exercise."
Right.
And groups tend to calibrate around the norm when they're small. When they're big, that's when they start to create divisions. And that's why, like I said, the best practices for group learning is basically between 3 and 6. We do 4 just because it's a nice, easy number, and it ensures that people share and trust each other. Because as a group,
I do like the idea of a smaller group, to be honest with you. Because, goodness, typically for years it's just being shove everybody in a room, pitch them this PowerPoint by death slide, bore them to death for a few hours, and you have to be there to get credit, blah, blah, blah. And everybody leaves angry, uninformed, don't care, move out. It accomplished nothing. Someone gets credit because they did the whatever training. No one really got trained or cared. And everybody's, you made them more angrier and probably divisive in those 3 hours than you probably would have done any other means. I think a group of 4 or 5 is pretty good to have, because that's where you form human bonds and just basic communication.
Yeah. Philip, we should work together. Like, you said it better So like what you're pointing to is like really like this heartbreaking problem. The way that we train and develop people is just like you share. It's like this one-to-many thing. Sit there, absorb the information. We're going to test you on it at the end. And what ends up happening is, like, grown ass adults are like, "I'm not a kid. I hate this. I hate you. I hate all of you here. Why are you making me do this thing I don't want to do?" Right? And it'd be one thing if it produced results, but as you know, it doesn't. Like,
They don't know.
And there's actually studies on this. One-time trainings, people forget 90% of what they learn after 7 days. So basically, every conventional training where you're sitting there hearing something, doing an exercise, and then taking a test on it, they're throwing away $9 out of every $10 they spend on that.
Now, how long does this Unity Lab process work then? Because you're saying it's not a one-time event. How many events are we looking at?
5.
5 events.
Yeah.
And these are how long?
They're 1 hour. So it's a 1 hour conversation with 3 peers, basically. So you do that once a week or once every 2 weeks, and then you're done. And what happens, so the research that we've done with the pilots that we've run, definitely by the 3rd event, people feel this sense of group identity. So, I grew up playing sports, and the feeling that I have, like playing rugby or playing on a basketball team, it takes a while to set in, but once it sets in, you're like, yes, my team. Like, these are my people. And what's different about this is that you get that group identity that sets in after or at the latest, the 3rd session. Some folks, it sets in the very first, like, wow, Philip just shared something about, an experience he had in high school. It resonated with mine. I can't wait to see that guy again. I want to get to know him better. So that it happens. And what the beautiful part is that it happens across difference. So, I could be a bisexual basket weaver, but we had the same experience, or we both shared in the same way. And you're like, this guy, nothing like me, but at least he was honest.
So how do you measure the success of these groups then? How do you know it's having whatever impact? What are you comparing it against?
Yeah.
Are there negative results of it, or is it all positive? I mean, how do you measure it?
Well, it's a great question. So what we do before each program is we do what's called a pre-assessment. So we ask folks, like, how fulfilled are they at work? What are the quality of their relationships? Are they growing? How likely are they to leave? We ask them, would they recommend their employer to a friend or a family member, to go work for, things like that. And then we test that after. And like I said, the research study, which, is available on the Unity Lab site, you could check it out.
So this is tested after the 5th course.
That's correct. Yeah.
The follow-up questioning that you're talking about.
Yeah. So we do it before and then after the 5th.
Mm-hmm. Have you done any studies where, like, you go back, say, a year later, 2 years later, and see if that was just a passing phase?
It's a great question. No, we haven't. This is actually a fairly new way to learn and build culture and develop skills. So this type of learning really has only been done in the last few years. What I can share is that some of these groups don't stop meeting. They're like, this is awesome. I want to do this at least once a month. You down? Or let's do it once a quarter. So that's one of the things we do ask them at the end is like, have you made an agreement to keep meeting? And vast majority say yes. Like we develop such a great connection that we want to keep it going.
So I'd be curious to look at the long data because just from my personal experience, my story, if you will, is every time I'm given these questionnaires to fill in, I don't want to fill them in anyway. And half the time I fill in what I think you want to hear, so you leave me alone. And therefore I'll put it in there. And I know I'm not alone. So, I mean, how do you, there's got to be ways to maybe test this data with more serious impact. Because it's like, if I say no, are you going to make me take 5 more of these? Okay. This is life transforming. I can't wait. You should do this for the whole country and make them do it. Just leave me alone. Right. Yeah. I mean, I know that attitude's out there. So have you factored that into your studies?
Yeah, it's quite predictable that X% are going to deliberately mislead a survey response.
Right.
So we factor that in.
So, I mean, I can definitely understand the approach of getting people together and just communicating together is bound to draw them together. Totally. Whether there's a program or not, I definitely get that. In my head, as a business person, thinking this is going to save my business, I'm not so sold on it per se, because the philosophy of thing is just go to work, don't be a jerk, be nice, go home. That should be the summary of it, right?
Yeah.
My experience, most people don't go to work and have like this. Let's have these theological / political debates for the day while we're on the factory floor. That just don't happen. Right. I mean, you might, the more comfortable you are, the more you open up with things and you share things. Everybody's boundaries, you move on, but that's just time with each other coping. Now, the settings that this is done, that you do it in, have you done it in scenarios where you have high turnover of employees? Like fast food, for example, or whatever it is. I mean, that's a thing that comes straight to my head. But there's security work. There's other jobs that like people be there for a few weeks and then they're gone. Yeah, that wasn't their dream job. It's not they don't want to connect with anybody, right? Is this going to have an impact? You think, or not?
Well, you bring up a very good point, and these type of approaches. So, like I said, before founding Unity Lab, I worked at 2 of the leading social learning companies. And we've done this work with, white collar employees, professional services folks at banks, folks, at tech companies. We've also done this work with roofing companies. We've done this work with car wash companies, fast food companies. Now, it does still work. And what we've seen is actually extends tenure. So, like, for example, with purpose per se, because you asked a good question, like, as a businessman, like, why the heck would I do this? Like, I don't really want to sit around and hang out like on company time, especially if I'm the business owner. Right? I need a good reason. Well, you probably know it's super expensive to recruit, train, and develop people. Like and when they leave, you got to do all that over again with the next person. So you want to keep people as long as there's a good fit.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah,
Right.
the good ones.
Right. Some it's like, so when you're leaving?
Right. So basically, when you activate somebody's personal purpose, they are over 3 times more committed to your organization's purpose. So there's like this kind of heart bond that says like, all right, I know who I am, and now I can see my organization, what the good that they do in the world or for our customers. I want to do that. We've also seen that they have an average tenure that's 7 months longer. So if you think about some professions where the value that person creates is so high, like let's say a sales role, that if you could keep a salesperson an extra 7 months, that's like, that could be upwards of $1 million to you, depending on what they're selling, right?
Right.
Whereas if that person leaves, then you have to invest all that time and energy. You don't get anything out of them for at least 6 or 9 months. And then they ramp up. And by 2 years, they're at full speed. Then they quit and go do it all over again. So if you can develop them, if they know that working at your company is a place where they can realize their potential, learn new skills, enjoy their work relationships, they're going to stay. Like, yeah, I could make more money at Johnson & Johnson or Burger King or wherever. But like, I love Philip. I want to see his smiling mug every day. I love Janine. Like you're basically creating community that makes people want to keep working there.
I can definitely understand the drawing of purpose. Somebody having a purpose is definitely better than being purposeless. No argument there. Sense of community, that definitely helps. As far as a business can make it a community, I mean, it's not like we're living in the same compound together. That would be a little too far, I think. But these are all. I think these are things that most business people get. Right, to within the realms that they have to work with, because in the end, people are going to make decisions on staying, going, showing up, having a meltdown, whatever it is they want to get out of their system. It makes me think of the show we have, The Undercover Boss, right, where the undercover bosses, they go and they check out their business, and they usually end up like rewarding this one super stellar employee with something, and then like you see in the transcripts after a few some of these episodes were like, yeah, and then they left a year later, and it's like, what was the it didn't make them endeared, loyal forever and ever. And to me, there's still the human element to this. I can see some of the benefits this could have in any organization, because you definitely want the personal connection. You want people having purpose. They want to feel trust. I think we all got that. Now, how is something like this then supposed to heal a divided land, like you're saying the United States is?
Yeah. So most of the time, we hang out with people who are like ourselves, who vote like us, who like the same hobbies, sports teams, crafts. So we're not really spending time with other Americans or people who are from a different part. And the organization is the only place where that happens. So those beliefs and attitudes, like if you're from a completely different background than I am, different race, different religion, different sexuality, and you and I spent 5 sessions in this group, and I'm like, wow, Philip's all right. Like I get that, we're totally different. We, go to bed differently, and we spend our free time differently. But man, he really loves his kids. That inspires me. Like, I want that guy in my life. You might have a completely different reason for feeling the same way. So the idea is that we're creating connections across boundaries because we have a shared mission. Now, this happened in World War II. This happened with Farm Aid. This happened basically anytime we've ever done anything good as a country, like with NASA defeating Hitler. It's because we took people who are different, put them together around a shared purpose, and gave them the skills to relate to one another.
You're listening to Rage of the Age. Rage of the Age. Politics, religion, economics, and history with a conservative bend.
Yeah, purpose, unity of objective definitely brings people who normally won't be together.
Absolutely.
But But think of the events you're talking about, though. Do we really want those type of events on a continuous basis to make us unified?
Well, yeah.
Because let's have a war every few years so that we're unified, right? I mean,
Well,
and at the end of it, though, let's say I do the course. I feel more empathetic to those around me. If I'm not, I'm still going to go hang out with people I'm comfortable with more than others. It's not going to make me switch to a whole nother demographic,
right.
because I'm still less comfortable, right?
Yeah.
So how does this
So
create a unity that don't exist now, as you're saying?
it's a really, really good point. So one of the things that we've seen, and there's a guy up at Cornell that studies this relationship between purpose and seeking out diversity or anxiety around diversity.
Mm-hmm.
And what he found actually was that when people connect to their purpose, meaning like their identity that's bigger than their race, their gender, their family, religion, all that, it's like what's in my heart is courage, compassion, and prosperity, right? When they connect to that, they're essentially creating some distance between their old self or their socialized self that they grew up with. And for some reason, we don't exactly know why yet, but they choose more diverse environments. So we saw that there was a 4x reduction in anxiety in diverse environments, and a 4x increase in wanting to be in a diverse city. So there is some kind of effect here when people understand who they really are. They get less attached to what they look like and what side of the tracks they're on and how they voted and all that. Now, as a white guy from the Midwest, I've got a special place in my heart for white guys from the Midwest. Like I meet someone from Indiana, I'm like, cool, like we're bros quickly, right?
Right.
And because I've done a lot of purpose work, I'm like really curious to meet people who are different. So I think it's a yes and. I don't think it's either or. Like I'm never not going to be a white kid from Central Illinois. I'm always going to be that guy. And I've got friends who are Hispanic and Black and Vietnamese and all that. So I'm a lot less kind of ideologically and racially kind of cloistered.
So did you just say there's a 4 times increase in people wanting diversity?
Yeah.
To move to areas of diversity?
Yeah.
So then where's the crisis then you're talking about us being absolutely divided against one another? If there's a 4-time increase of wanting diversity.
Because not that many people have done purpose and values work. So that's kind of like the big kind of use case or the theory of change here is that if we turn on a bunch of people to their purpose and values and give them the experience of discovering that and sharing that with people who are different, they're going to start to make different choices. I'm not saying people are going to move it from a state, but they might choose a different neighborhood. Like, I don't feel as unsafe in that neighborhood as I maybe did a couple of years ago. So we think that's going to happen. Again, this is early research. It's only been done within the last few years, but all of it's on the methodology page and on Unity Lab.
Yeah, because when I look through the history of my life, as short as it is, nearly 50 years, if I look at and I'm an avid history buff. When I look, especially U.S. history, I look at the history of the nation, and I progress where it was from now or till then, throughout the hundreds of years, and I see a steady direction of purpose because it's guided along certain principles that makes the United States the United States. To me, it seems like a deviation to where it's like we're so obsessed with I have to be involved with someone else's. I have to be emotionally attached to every person in my workplace in order to connect with them. When to me, it's just when we're together, we learn to embrace one another. I mean, when you think about the Irish, used to be absolutely hated. Now, you're Irish. Who cares, right? Can't even tell. You look. I don't even know you're Irish. Yeah. You're part Irish. You don't even know what that even means to you, right? It's but at one time they were absolutely despised and hated, right? The Polacks, Italians, right? For the Chinese, and a lot of those once you work through those tensions in this country, we move on. We embrace each other, and you know what? They'll still hang out with each other maybe in some places, you know?
Yeah.
But in the end, we learn to grow together. So we've had great periods of time in this history where we've been at each other's throats.
Yeah.
But we also have had times where we have moved beyond that. Like I'm thinking of my grandmother, for example. To the day she died, I'm convinced she hated the Japanese because they attacked us and the fighting the war with them. That was her time frame, and she absolutely hated them till the day she died. Nowadays, no one even, much less remembers what happens on December 7th, 1941, much less,
Right.
you see a Japanese person, you don't think, oh, we hate you because of what you did. You know what? Because in Japan and the United States have great, relations compared to what it was then, right?
Oh yeah.
And it's because we're just in proximity with one another. We learn to interact with one another. This culture has a way of bringing people together as long as these differences aren't greatly animated. My concern is if we keep amplifying race and understanding this race and everybody always keeps a score of who gets more attention than the others, let's face it, right? And we keep just pushing that. It's almost like we'll just be pushing away when the only thing that really needs to work is we just need to be around each other and realize that we can build elements of trust and connection, have shared purposes, because the thing is with purpose is we can have a grand purpose which will last for a time, but our lives are formed around multiple purposes, usually of our own choosing, and who we choose to come along with this is going to be a part of that.
But you bring up a really good point, Philip, and the way that let's call it like the progressive folks, the left, has been going about trying to achieve diversity and equality hasn't really brought many people from the right into it, because it basically lands just as you said. Like, why are we talking about this all the time? We have much bigger problems. We have COVID. We have a recession. We have Russia.
Right.
We have China. We have climate change. Like, let's not deal with it. And I totally get that. And one of the things that, so like, you brought up the Irish, right? I'm half Irish. And one of the things that happens when people incur some kind of oppression is that a trauma sets in in their lives, and sometimes it gets passed down. And so there's a great Irish quote or Irish joke. It's like a non-Irish American walks past a beautiful house, a beautiful wife, with a beautiful wife inside, a beautiful car outside, and says, "One of these days, I'm gonna be that guy." An Irishman walks past, same house, same wife, same car, and says, "One of these days, I'm gonna get that son of a bitch." and it's because of centuries of English oppression. We're like, if anyone's got anything, they got it because they've been stepping on our necks. And so it's less so now. But when I look at my our fellow country folks who are from indigenous tribes, who are descendants of former slaves, they still got that stuff in there. Like, it's still there, and it's showing up. Like, there's one African American households have 1 cent of wealth for every dollar that white households have in wealth. It's not because they're less talented or not working hard enough. There's something happening in their access to opportunities, education, getting promoted, that's keeping all that wealth basically in white hands. So we've got work to do, and I do agree that, like, the contact hypothesis that you mentioned, like when we bring people together who are different, like we actually do start to like and trust and love one another and work together. And I don't think we can just jump over like the deep wounds, because people are still getting killed. Like last year there was 5 lynchings. Like, it's still happening. I don't think we can just say, "Hey guys, forget about all this race stuff. Let's just get together," when they're still being killed.
Well, if someone's racist, you obviously don't turn a blind eye to it.
Yeah.
But when you try to pronounce a sentence upon a nation as it's just systematically racist, when I can, like, again, in my short lifespan, I know exactly what it was like growing up in the 70s and 80s, and I'm seeing it now. And I'm telling you, this is not systematic. There's been vast improvement. You're blind if you're not paying attention to it. And in my opinion, people make money on it, selling this racism, and they're not going to let it die if there's a dollar to be made. Because there's been there mixed marriages and mixed couples have drastically increased. Mixed families have drastically increased. Um, I live in an area that's about 50-50 here. And they have the blacks have as much money as the whites do, and we have a sizable population of Hispanics. They're getting along just fine. Too. No one's being stepped on and oppressed. There's no like one white guy holding all the money. We need to change old paradigms that were true in 1920,
right,
and look at 2020,
right,
and go from there. If there's going to be healing, you have to let go of paradigms and scarecrow arguments that don't exist.
I'm with you.
Or you're going to alienate people. They ain't going to listen to you.
Yeah. That's sound logic, Philip. I'm with you on that. I think where a lot of folks are coming from with regard to like addressing race head on is that there've been all these like blind studies where they'll take same resume, black name, white name,
Right.
white name will get called, right? So there's like there are these beliefs and behaviors that people like might not even know. I mean, I know I'm constantly pulling out racist and sexist and homophobic things. Like I live with a woman who calls me on all sorts of stuff. Wives are great for that. I call you out when you're being a jerk. And so I know in my own life, I'm still discovering biases that I have against certain types of people. And if I'm looking at them and I'm finding them, odds are other folks have them too. And it's affecting like who gets called back for the interview, who gets into the college, who gets into the thing. And I'm not saying that anybody here is saying like, I don't wake up, or I should say very few people wake up saying, I'm going to go make life harder for people of a different color or different sexuality. Most folks know, they're like, yeah, gay, straight, light, black, whatever. Like, I don't see color. I'm not racist. But there's something like that's back behind the conscious mind in their biases that still makes them kind of move towards one or another. And I think that's what a lot of, the inclusion diversity training tries to address. I don't think it's terribly effective, but that's what it's trying to get at.
That's the things it brings up. But again, it's focusing on one group's racism as if no one else has a bias, and they go after them.
Yeah.
And that doesn't bring nobody together.
Right.
You're going to immediately start dividing, which is, though the numbers you say are changing, is still the bigger part of the population. Now, a bigger part of the population that's systematically racism elected a black president, yet we're systematically racist. How did that happen if that's the case? It's because it's not the case. You point out examples of this person and that person, what they did. Okay, yeah, because you know what? They're humans, and humans are sinful, and they do horrible things. That happens across every demographic. But there's no healing when you go after one group and say you are evil and you have trouble with this and you're racist, don't even know it. Like what you're saying, it's like you don't even know you're racist. And you disagree and proves you're racist. I'm like, how does that work? I mean, this is none. That's not based on a community model.
Yeah.
But again, it's just when you're in proximity with different people, you have to build the trust with each other. No program's going to do it. No curriculum's going to change it. Brainwashing children ain't going to fix it. None of this is going to, because you'll still have resentment.
I agree with you, Philip. And there's a great study that came out in 2016 from the Harvard Business Review. They looked at 800 organizations that tried to do diversity, equity, inclusion work. You know what they saw? Neutral to negative outcomes. That the more they did this stuff, they actually made life worse for diverse candidates. Like they weren't getting hired, they weren't getting promoted, they weren't staying. Yeah. And I think a big piece of it is what you named is like when people in the dominant class or the people, like us, males, white, whatever, straight, able-bodied, when we're forced to confront something that we didn't choose to do, and we don't like where that's headed, we dig in. We say like, no, like we're not gonna do this diversity agenda here. So I'm totally in agreement with you, and that's why with Unity Lab we don't go at that. We don't say, all right, you're gonna learn about your biases and why you're a racist. We don't do that. We do exactly what you're talking about. Take people who are different, put them together, give them a purpose, and over time they start to like and trust each other. That's it.
Let me bring up something from your webpage on Unity Lab here under our story. It says, we're beginning a new chapter of U.S. history, one where we surrender the paternalistic, righteous, and exploitative for the curious, unifying, and empowering. Paternalistic and righteous. Righteous is bad. Paternalism is bad. I mean, there's even in how you explain Unity Lab, there's still that element of ideology that some will take offense to.
Yeah, I could definitely say that better for sure. But what I mean by paternalism is that, like, I know better than you, so you're going to sit there and take this training. Like,
right.
Righteousness, like, I'm better than you because, I went to a better school, or, I grew up on this side of the tracks. That's what I mean by that. I need to say it differently. But it's a very good point. I'm glad you brought it to my attention.
Yeah, because I saw it, I'm thinking, oh, here we go.
There you go.
Men are the problem, and we need more female leadership, and we need to, take away the church from society. I mean, because how we use our word, whether we like it or not, Brandon, the words we use will trigger something in somebody. It's almost impossible to not have a potential for division. What needs to happen is just being cordial with each other's division and not want you to kill them over it.
I'm with you, Philip. I'm with you because we are a nation of incredible diversity, and to appreciate it and accept it, and to not have it be something that we would go to violence over. There's been a number of studies over the last year looking at how much in support Americans are for violence towards the other political party.
Yeah.
like I saw numbers in
Lord.
like little less than a year ago. It's like 9 months ago. It said 18% of liberals and 13% of conservatives justify violence to get what they need.
Right.
Like, the numbers have gone up. It's now something like 40-some% of conservatives, and I think like 20-some-odd% of liberals. So what we're talking about, like, right now we just have a bunch of talking heads, on, politicians, cable news, blah, 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 right, blah, 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 left. What we're talking about actually has like life and death consequences. I mean, my house was targeted by an extremist group. Like, they took a photo of it, put my address, posted it online, and said, we are going to basically kill the tyrants.
Mm.
And
you're a tyrant now.
yeah, exactly. I'm a tyrant. And so,
wow.
I'm like, this is not some theoretical thing. Like, I know there are people who know where I live and don't like my house, don't like me, and they're like ready to kill me. Right?
It's like the Irish guy saying, "I'm going to get that guy."
Yeah, I'm going to get that guy. Yeah. So, on one hand, what we're talking about is just a better, more scalable, effective way to train people at work, right? Very simple thing. On the other hand, what we're talking about is we are a powder keg as a nation. We hate each other for all these reasons that have nothing to do with who we are, what's in our hearts, nothing to do with what this country is about. And so, like I said, it's my view that, I mean, there's stuff the government can do, there's stuff religion can do, stuff education can do, but what do we have control over? Our jobs. We have control over how we show up, how we train people, how we recruit people, and basically who we are for our customers and our employees and our investors. So we have the power.
I think it's a step if people can, if you're at a job where no one knows anyone, they can start connecting as human beings. That I can definitely see something like this working. Creating a good atmosphere works just, to me, a smart idea anyway, rather than straight up brutal, give me the output, right? Uh,
I need my widget.
yeah, well, yeah. Where's my whoppers? They're not coming out fast enough, right? But taking on a community scale, a national scale, that's going to be something to 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 wonder how that's going. There ain't no fours or fives in that. There, you got whole segments of populations now wanting to kill each other and get your house, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the polarization is, we've always been polarized as a nation. I think most people don't understand that if you look at our history. But it's frightening right now because of what you're saying. The numbers that are willing to just pull the trigger
Yeah.
to force the polarization issue to one side
Yeah.
has gained tremendous support, and that's a very frightening thing.
Very frightening thing. Because like I said, like we got real problems. I mean, this is a real problem, but like we got cancer, right? We got COVID. We got opioid epidemic. We got China, Russia. We got climate change. We got all crumbling infrastructure.
Right.
Most people can't make a living wage. Like we have to come together, and I don't think we're gonna until we learn to like and trust each other.
Yeah, definitely could use some more trust. Some more trust indeed. Brandon, Unity Lab. If somebody's interested in what you got, how can they get hold of you?
Yeah, it's just unitylab.co.
Unitylab.co.
Yeah.
All right, Brandon, it's been a pleasure talking with you. Appreciate having you on.
Thank you, Phil.
You're listening to Rage of the Age. Rage of the Age. Politics, religion, economics, and history with a conservative bend.
Welcome to the essay segment. It was a real joy talking with Brandon Peele during this interview. We were talking about a topic that needs to be talked about, but it becomes quite toxic oftentimes when that discussion is brought forth. Why is it toxic? I ask myself. Well, why is it that it's so hard to have a conversation about this, about things that divide in the nation, how we see race and different people groups getting together? Why is it that we seem to make no headway now when it's become like almost an obsession topic amongst many people to talk about? And where does this toxicity come from? Made me do a little bit of thinking about it. Listening to this interview again, but Brandon has a good approach in that he's not trying to win an ideological argument at the workplace, which honestly was one of my fears that I might pick up during the interview. And of course, if you listen to the interview, it had something to do with some things I was reading on the website. I was like, I hope this doesn't mean what it means. And the whole reason, but that highlights my point, I guess, is there are certain words that are used that when they are used, it immediately raises the toxic level between parties because those words have meanings. Each side, since we're talking about polarization, each side uses certain words to emphasize something, but the other side also knows what that word implies. And when those words are employed, there's the automatic walls go up and fisticuffs are ready and blood is ready to be drawn because they didn't even have to explain anything. Just the word being used is enough to start that, to raise that level of potential animosity. And why is that? The words have become so charged to the point where you can't even think. The word does all the thinking for you. I hope this makes some sense to you. It seems strange, but it's not a new idea. It's if you've, when I was in school, it was mandatory reading to read in 1984 in my high school. Novel by George Orwell. That great novel that talks about it implies by in the day it was written in 1947, published 48, something like that. and he just flipped the year like 84 as if this is some time in the future. But realistically, he was writing about things going on in his time. These are things that he was observing. And he was kind of worried that, if this trend continues, this will be our life as we know it all around the planet. I mean, that these regimes like this would form. And, in that story, there's this, he talks about, true speak, I believe is what it's called. I think it's true speak. I might new speak, true. I think maybe it's new speak, something like this. But the whole point of it is that you control the vocabulary and what can be said so that the very vocabulary itself controls your thought process. Maybe to you that sounds silly. Maybe to Americans who are used to this idea of free speech are like, well, that's just absolutely ridiculous. I can't be controlled by what a word is. And I challenge you on that today. How can it not? I mean, think about it. If certain words are used now, you could get a huge backlash of people saying, what? You can't say that. You can't use that word. Now you have to use this word, right? You can't call this people group, this anymore. You have to address them as this. I mean, and that's just one example of numerous attempts to control the vocabulary. Why? Because words have power. They have meaning. That's why the Bible says there's the power of life and death in the tongue, right? That you can control anything in the body, but good luck controlling somebody's tongue. It's so deceitful and so destructive that if you can control that, then God has control over you. That's for sure. The tongue, when it employs its words, it can employ them to heal, or it can employ them as a weapon. And oftentimes our words now are used as a weapon, and controlling the words you're allowed to use is also a form of a weapon in that it inhibits your ability to speak. Changing definitions of words is a way of doing it. I have noticed over the years, being in the occupation that I am, I preach faith. Well, when I hear a lot around me in academia or news articles or different documentaries, and they talk about faith, it's this idea of, well, this is just what I want to believe, sort of like it's a value meal. I want a number 12 go large. Well, I want a number 11, but I don't want that included. I want to change it to something else. And that's my faith. I mean, that's kind of how faith is presented nowadays. It's sort of like your personal choice of what you want. But that's not what faith is according to the word as I use it and as the Bible uses it. It's totally different. It's not wanting to believe in something that you can't prove, which is one of the many definitions of faith. It's the most common definition. According to the Bible, that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. So when I talk faith, I mean it differently. The Bible means it differently, but because that word has been kind of taken down a path to be used and changed in its meaning, so it's come to this, that when I say faith, many have been trained to hear it as something that's not what I'm talking about. I hope this makes sense. Words matter. And how they're employed, or even how they are prevented from being employed, is a manner of expression in itself, and it's a manner of control. That's one of the reasons why I'm very adamant about this idea of free speech. Even if it's something you don't like, you can't just suppress it, because then that means somebody can suppress yours. And that's something that we're missing, the idea of something that can be suppressed within the wording. But these words become toxic. They spur actions and reactions because they're constantly used as buzzwords. They're used to mobilize a base, and they're used to criticize the opposition of that base. And, of course, the powers that be find these to be very effective tools in fighting these political battles. They just throw out these terms. and constantly stoke the fire with them. To where if you wanted to have a normal conversation about one of these words that might be a topic, well, people go from tolerant to straight up, I want you dead, with like an instant switch. And of course, this is a problem. With what Brandon Peele is trying to accomplish, of course, is using the workplace as one place where people meet together. And thus, well, and of different backgrounds and different raising, social and economic statuses, and you're going to interact with people that you normally won't interact with because you generally hang around people you're comfortable with, who tend to be similar to you. That makes sense. And the first thing we have to understand is that's not a crime. And if you think it's a crime, then you look in the mirror, you have to condemn yourself, and you can quit the hypocrisy, because everyone does this. Everyone. Everyone's comfortable around the people they're comfortable with. You can't call that a crime. The crime is when you try to elevate that one group you're comfortable with over the others and, attack or destroy or inhibit the other because they make you uncomfortable. And of course, as I've always emphasized, this is not a white man's problem. This is every man's problem that must be dealt with. But what heals these differences is, like I was mentioning, and I think this approach that Brandon's definitely picking up on. Of course, he's probably more savvy with it than I am. He's got the scientific jargon. He's got the studies. He can probably do the math and the statistics, which scare me utterly to death and will make me pull out the hair out of my head that I don't have. But nonetheless, proximity interaction with people, this is what brings healing between people. This is what allows them to come to terms and to think of the possibility of, there yet could be peace between us, right? And this is despite the fact there's differences. This is what I think the deadliest downfall of at the moment that the left is trying to push. And I'm not picking just on the left, because you have issues on both sides regarding how we relate to each other. But as far as the thing that's really being rammed down our throats, it's this particular idea like this, that it's a twist and discoherent philosophy. So I'm going to try to explain it, and you're going to be like, well, that makes no sense. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's my point. But this is sort of how it is, right? We have to embrace all these differences. This is the approach, right? And therefore, you have to, we have to, in their mind, kind of force this to happen to make people get along, right? But at the same time, because we're different, we're not equal. And this gets into this whole equity idea. Equity being a word they choose rather than equality now for certain reasons. Again, words have power, right? And but it's this circle. You have to recognize differences. But then when these differences are recognized, then it's, that interferes with their idea of equality, which is everything is equal if everything's the same. Whereas, again, vocabulary in my mind, and those who think like I do, equality is despite the differences, you're equal. That despite the differences, you're all equal in the eyes of God. Whether you're rich, poor, whatever it is, right? Whether you're these people or this people who speak this language, doesn't matter. To God, you are the same, and you are all equal. Despite the fact there's differences. Despite he has more, he has less, you got this advantage, you have this disadvantage, you're all equal. But in their mind, that's not equal. That's inequality, and the only way to make it equal is to make everybody the same. I mean, the madness I've seen to where there was this party in Australia where these people are wearing platform shoes of various heights so that everyone could be the same height, so that one doesn't feel superior or inferior to the other due to height. And that's the lunacy that it brings you to, but that emphasizes the mindset. We're not equal until everybody's made the same. Yet, there's this whole thing of emphasizing everybody's differences. Now, how in that construct is there suddenly going to be peace and harmony coming about from that? Because you're going to emphasize difference in what people don't have and how they're unequal. Now, the next step is to what? Demand that they're equal, which is what? To make them the same. Now, see, I'd rather everybody not be the same and yet be equal. And that's maybe perhaps the power of the wording, the point of the definition. There definitely has to be clarifying of terms when we speak to one another, it'll seem. But my hope is as we approach this new year, if we're in proximity to one another, we'll learn to grow together. It'll take time. There'll be mishaps. There'll be some anger. There'll be some joy. There'll be some double crossing going on, but there'll be some healing and some prosperity at the same time. If we let it go the way it has always gone in this nation, let people get together and feel each other out, build levels of trust. If this is something that's forced, it is not going to work. All right? It's not going to work. I think Brandon Peele has a workable system here. I'm interested to hear throughout the near time frame how the studies are looking with the results in this. I like that it's removed the ideology from it, which is almost the first thing that's put there. And that's why these words are toxic. You come to the workplace and you mention race relations, and it's immediately laced with ideology and political slants, which immediately loses half the people, and they're not going to cooperate with you. And you've not accomplished the goal. This is a better approach, I think, because you're dealing with people just being people. And I think, honestly, most conservatives are okay with that. It's overwhelming number that we want to just be able to get along with each other and not be forced to fit some monolith. One of the monoliths, and one of the things, as Brandon mentioned it, I was thinking of this after the fact, but he was saying, getting to know, differences between, maybe people of different colors or whatnot. But, in thinking about it, I've known people in my life that are black or Hispanic or Asian, and who were just like me in many ways. And they I guess the point is their culture wasn't their race. And maybe that's another topic for another day. Being black isn't a culture. Being white isn't a culture. Being Asian isn't a culture. Now, are there different cultures within those groups? You betcha. But there's no way that every black person has the same culture. There's no way every white person has the same culture. Every Asian doesn't have the same culture. And it usually the cultures change over time by how long a family is here in the States versus when they first immigrated. That'll change over time too. The culture kind of merges together, and that's a good thing. That's why some conservatives are kind of weary when you, start emphasizing the race thing, because it's done in a monolith. All black people are the same. All white people are the same. That's an absolute joke. That's a lie. Absolute lie. And maybe we would learn that if we just had common conversations with each other. Did you know? I know this is a shocker, but did you know there are black Republicans? I know you didn't know that. They sure are. There's a whole bunch of them, and the number's growing, and that baffles some people. And what's the response by some? Well, they're not really black. Well, what, do you change their color on them? This is ridiculous. See, that's the toxicity I'm talking about. Just understanding each other. That, look, I'm not forced to be a certain way because of my color. That's the American idea. Is I am beyond my birth. I am beyond my color, and that you can like me for my character. Not because of just look at me and that's what you see. And with all that, I hope with concluding this essay segment that in this year, we can have more proximity, more correspondence, more civil discussion, and be honest with each other and just grow in our humanity with one another.
You've been listening to Rage of the Age. If you loved today's podcast, make sure to leave a review on the media you're listening through. Secure future episodes by heading over to rageoftheage.com and clicking the RSS feed button. Until next time, this has been Rage of the Age.